We're starting to get some viewers in. So welcome to the March remote meetup. I know we've skipped a couple months due to holidays and just stuff happening here at edX. And we're going to aim to run these remote meetups probably every couple months. We found sort of every month was a bit too much, and that way we can kind of aggregate more news at a time, and hopefully find interesting speakers to interview and share with the community. Those are kind of rough timings as far as 10 to 11, 2 to 3. We might make adjustments depending on the schedule. And generally, we're going to talk about what we've been doing here in edX, and when appropriate, we'll do community highlights. This month, we're going to focus mainly on Ficus as well as the upcoming Open edX conference that's coming up in May. So with that, I will hand it over to Ned, who will talk about Ficus.
Hey everyone. One thing to note, we have a channel in Slack called Pound Remote Meetup, and we are watching it. So the Hangout technology we're using here doesn't let you talk to us, but you can ask questions in the Slack channel, and we'll try to leave enough pauses between topics to catch any questions that come up, so we don't have to go backwards to address whatever it is that's on your mind. This is ideally would be an interactive session, but with the limitations of the technology mean that you can type at us while we talk at you. So Ficus. Ficus is the 6th release of Open edX. We've been naming them after trees, as you know, from Aspen through Ficus. We released the first release of Ficus on February 23rd, and we had a second one just yesterday. Ficus.2 came out. The Ficus code is all of the code that was running on edX.org as of January 10th. It takes about 6 weeks these days for us to get a release out. So between January 10th and February 23rd is when we were nailing down the rough edges and smoothing it off so that it would be good for everyone. There are about 6 months worth of features and fixes since Eucalyptus is based on the code as of July. So there was a lot of work that went into it. The biggest change was that it runs on Ubuntu 16.04 instead of 12.04. So all of the previous releases, Aspen through Eucalyptus, ran on the same Ubuntu operating system release, 12.04. Because 12.04 was a long-term release, that was fine, but it was going out of support in April, I guess on Saturday. So we had to upgrade the operating system. So we went to the latest long-term release, which is Ubuntu 16.04. Because of the operating system change, there is no upgrade path from Eucalyptus to Ficus. So if you were running Dogwood and you wanted to run Eucalyptus, there was a shell script you could run that would upgrade your machine in place from Dogwood to Eucalyptus. There is not an upgrade path like that from Eucalyptus to Ficus because we didn't want to take on the engineering challenge of writing a shell script that was going to change your operating system for you. That seemed like a losing proposition. So what we've said instead is that you will build a new machine with Ficus. And so far that seems to be going okay. We haven't been getting feedback from people about that being a problem, but we are keenly watching the various feedback channels to make sure that that's going okay, because it is a difference from all of our previous releases. Next slide. There we go. So this is a quick summary of some of the biggest features and improvements that are in Ficus. There isn't any one marquee big change that's been happening. The edX.org team here has been working a lot on polishing and improving the learner experience. There are release notes that go into more detail about some of the other changes. The main thing to remember is that the Ficus release, like most releases, is Are you telling me that people can't hear me?
That's
Is there anyone who can hear me? Yes, okay. Someone said they can hear me, so that's fine. We got, okay, good. Sorry, everyone. Technology's hard. So we make these releases based on the calendar, basically. And so whatever code was in January 10th is what went into Ficus. And we got a bunch of polishing and improvements in the learner experience, the studio experience, some analytics improvements, and so on and so forth. Definitely, if you're interested in knowing what you'll get by moving up to Ficus, take a look at the release notes. There are many more details there than would fit on this slide. Anyone want to say anything else about Ficus? So Ficus is still fairly new. We are interested in hearing about your experiences with it. Most of the changes that are in Ficus.2 were issues that were reported by the community about trying to use Ficus. The edX.org engineers, they think of Ficus as 2 months ago. It's January 10th to them. So we need to hear from you with feedback about what's going well and what's not going well. And we try to respond to problems being reported in Slack and on the mailing lists. I personally feel a little bit guilty that I don't get to it as often as I'd like to, but we definitely do want you to be telling us what your experience is so that we can make more improvements. We have things to put into it. We'll get a Ficus.3 out there, and definitely things will get rolled into the next release that we hear from you. So your feedback is very important. We don't have a slide for this, but the next release is going to be the G release, of course. It's called Ginkgo, and we are aiming for it to be out sometime in the early summer. Let's say July.
Solidly midsummer.
Solidly midsummer. My manager says solidly midsummer.
I gotta make it like that.
Well, you gotta make it like that. Exactly. So anyway, Ficus is out. Let us know what you think. Done. Next slide. Okay, so this is a next topic. In previous remote meetups, we have talked about an effort to get a better way to support people with questions and answers. And we had talked about maybe doing a Stack Overflow kind of thing, or maybe having a different thing kind of like it, or rearranging the mailing lists. What we have done so far is very, very lightweight. We have created a new space in the Confluence wiki called Open edX Answers. And the reason to make a new space is that it has a different design that's focused purely on answers to questions. Basically, it's sort of like an FAQ, except instead of having one long page that with 10 different answers, some of which are still current and some of which are really old and you can't tell which is which, we're going to put one answer per page, with the hopes that the useful and valuable ones will stay current and be visited, and the ones that no longer are just won't get any traffic anymore, and that's fine. They can just fade off into history. That site is not a place to ask questions, so the idea is that questions will still be asked on Slack and the mailing lists, and what I've been trying to do is when I see a question there that will have a crisp answer that I can provide, I try to put the answer into a wiki page on the answers space, and then put a link to that page into Slack or the mailing list. And I'm hoping that that will populate over time. If you're the type of person that is hanging out in Slack or the mailing lists and you have answers for people, I am eager for you to create pages in that space. It's a public space and anyone can create content there. So if you think you have an answer to a question that people are asking, please feel free to go there and start adding answers to it. If you have anything you want to ask about that whole process, I'm available as usual on Slack and mailing lists, and we'd be glad to talk to you about it. We're trying to do this kind of as a least effort, try things out and see how it goes, and then iterate kind of process, rather than form a committee and build a spec and in a year or two have something that maybe is or is not what people want. So try that space out, see what you think, give me some feedback, and hopefully it'll be a good resource that'll help people find answers better than the stuff we already have. And that's it. Yes, Pierre Samba-Pete has put a link to it in the remote meetup Slack channel. Cool.
Okay, we'll take questions at the end if you have any. So moving ahead, so this is just a short update for everyone. We did a realignment within the product engineering teams at edX that it's something that may sort of come through in some of your interactions with us, particularly in the OSPR process. We aligned around customers. So we have sort of 3 high-level customers that we're thinking about how we're developing our product around. Those are educator, learner, and business. So you will see, if you're a contributor, you'll see tags and Jira projects and references in documentation to these 3 teams. It was just something that we wanted to share. As part of that restructuring, we're revisiting the process by which we handle OSPRs, and that's a little bit sort of internal to us, but it is sort of an opportunity for us to think about that process sort of holistically as well. So we always welcome input on that process, but if you do have particular feedback or models that you think we should consider as we're having these conversations, we definitely welcome that.
People might not be familiar with what the old structure was.
True.
You want to say anything about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the main teams that are impacted, the previous structure that were realigned into this structure were formerly the analytics team, solutions team, e-commerce team, and TNL team.
Right.
I think, God help me if I'm forgetting something. But that is primarily, those were primarily the teams previously. So there's a bit of shuffling. This means that teaching and learning is a little bit split, where it was previously one team. Those responsibilities are sort of split between educator and learner. And analytics has also been split actually between the Insights product, which is a educator product, and the data engineering team, which is a sort of centralized like infrastructure team as opposed to a product team. So moving on, we will next talk about the conference. So the 2017 Open edX conference, I've been super annoying in sharing in chat that it is coming up, is being hosted by the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid at the Leganés campus in Madrid, Spain, May 23rd through 26th. And we have just a quick breakdown of the schedule here. Tuesday will be community-led, hands-on technical tutorials. Wednesday and Thursday will be the primary conference days. These are very sort of traditional conference days with keynotes and presentations and lightning talks, and we will have a reception on Wednesday evening, which is always a great opportunity to meet people and have sort of more casual conversations with people that you may have only interacted with on Slack or on pull requests and things like that. It's a really great opportunity to interact more informally. And then Friday, May 26th, we'll be having a project day and introduction to studio training. Next slide. So just a few numbers on the conference. We have over 150 people registered so far, which is way more than we've had by this point in the process in past years. So we're really excited about the level of interest that we're seeing this year. Another reflection of that, we had 129 proposals submitted. So the last year was our previous high, so we're just continuing to go up and up. Last year was around 80, so that's a huge improvement or a huge increase. And then we have 3 keynotes, 30 sort of traditional presentations, 18 lightning talks, and 6 tutorials for our 4 awesome days in Madrid. Next slide. And then, so I just wanted to sort of go over some of the highlights. So we have these 3 keynotes. We have, of course, our CEO and founder, Anand, will be speaking. We're really excited about Nick Van Dam, who's the Global Chief Learning Officer at McKinsey & Company. He's going to share with us, his insights in sort of the corporate learning space. And then Vincent Zimmer, co-founder of Chiron Open Higher Education, which is a platform for blended learning for refugees and edX partner. And we're really excited about his insights into the social impact side of the MOOC space. So we have the tracks that we're focusing on at the conference: innovative courses, analytics and research, corporate and professional learning trends, course authoring and MOOC production, and operations and technical deep dives. We tried to make sure that we have spread across all 5 of these topics. Operations and technical deep dives is the area that we have probably the most talks in a single category. But there are at least 3 talks in each of these categories, and we're really excited about the program. On the next slide, I have a few highlights across these topics. We just go to the next slide. We're really, edit speaker tools. Yeah, that was a copy and paste fail. Actually, I can fix it right now. Doing it live, folks. So the first one, the edX Kickstarter, was a proposal by OpenCraft, MIT, and Davidson. They're going to talk about ideas that they have for collaborating on open edX contributions. There's a talk from Harvard around adaptive learning in edX course. They did some really neat work in that space. And the last one is a talk from AppSembler on how they beautifully and quickly engage students on iOS and Android. The speaker tools bit being a relic of copying and pasting from Sketch. Go ahead and fix that. So moving on to the next slide. So I wanted to give some more details on the tutorials and project day, because I think we have probably a slightly more technical audience on the meetup than as a whole. So these are hopefully particularly relevant to you as well. We're kicking off the tutorials on Tuesday with DevStack Install Fest. So if you want to get your latest DevStack environment, we want to make sure that everyone has sort of a base environment and things going in. So we'll be sending an email with some pre-work. If you haven't set up DevStack or you're getting a new one set up. So you have something fresh to work on going into the tutorials. I think that'll be a big help. And then we'll spend the time really the beginning of the day, Tuesday, just helping people troubleshoot their environment. If they have questions, we'll have a bunch of edX engineers on hand to help out with that. And then throughout the day, we'll be covering a bunch of really great topics. We'll have a UX workshop. There's an XBlock tutorial, a tutorial on OpenStack, one on SSO, one on using machine learning for translations and transcripts, and one on code graders. And then for the project day on Friday, this is sort of a mini hackathon. It's really just an opportunity to pair or get feedback with either others in the community or with edX engineers. It's a little sort of less formal than hackathons have been in the past, and it's an opportunity to work on something brand new or something you already have in progress that you want to get feedback from someone else on. That's really what we're hoping to get out of that time. So we'll be on site all day on Friday for that.
There's a question of, will the tutorial materials be made public after the conference? Will they be publicly available after the conference?
Yeah, so we'll definitely encourage all of the tutorial leaders to make as much of the material available as I'm assuming that most of them will be working off of public GitHub repos and whatnot. I think it's really up to each tutorial organizer, exactly to what extent. But we'll definitely work with them to make sure that those are the cases. We're not going to be recording the tutorials. So that's one thing to note. Just we don't have the infrastructure set up for that. So it'll really be up to each instructor the level of detail of the documentation that they create that will be available. Because some might be a little bit more winging it, and some might have more concrete documentation that they're drawing from. So the next slide, we have a couple of important dates. I sent around the link to this slide deck so you don't have to memorize this URL, but April 15th is the deadline for our hotel block. We have a block of hotels at the NH Hotels in Madrid. You can sort of see the directions from Madrid to the campus on the website, which is con.openedx.org. And then May 16th is the last chance to register. That may seem far off, but it will sneak up on you faster than you think. It will sneak up on me faster than I think. So I assume that will be everyone else's experience also. So just wanted to share those dates. And then, so just to learn more, again, the conference website is at con.openedx.org, and the detailed program is on Sketch at openedx2017.sketch.com. So you can dive deeper into that full program of 30 talks and 6 tutorials and get more details, as well as the ET Lightning talks, which you can find on Sketch as well. So lastly, you can, if you've already registered, you're already all set and really excited about the conference. You can help us spread the word. You can tweet about the session or tutorial or keynote that you're excited about with the hashtag OpenEdX2017. Email your network with links, sharing sort of what you're excited about. If you've gone to past conferences, what's been great about them, and things like that, and share the conference website on your LinkedIn and Facebook as well to help us get the word out. And that's it. So we'll definitely take questions now. If there are any more questions about any of the topics that we covered or anything else that we can answer while we're here. We have a good amount of time left. We're going to shoot for the next remote meetup to be in June. By our normal schedule, it would be in May, but we're otherwise disposed in May.
And we'll all be together in Madrid,
Exactly.
so it doesn't have to be a remote meetup.
Right. We will have a meetup in May. You just have to fly to Madrid. And so we hope you do, and we hope to see you there. And otherwise, we'll connect with you on Slack, on the mailing list, on the new Q&A site, and all those things. So with that said, are there any more questions?
We'll get some typing.
You guys use Snapchat? Yeah, Snapchat.
No, we don't do Snapchat. We don't have an Instagram account either.
Oh, no.
I know.
Take pictures of the site.
So I see there's a couple of people typing, so we'll hold on and see. Talk a bit about course discovery that we might not know just by reading the online docs from John Baldwin. That's a very good question. So course discovery is a service that our learner team has built and is continuing to enhance. It is because of the architecture and the timeline for Ficus. It was something that we were not able to include in Ficus, but will be included in Ginkgo. The primary driver of that is that the programs service will be has been deprecated and will be removed in Ginkgo. And so the catalog service has the programs functionality in addition to a lot of other really great, useful functionality that you can use to create your own marketing site, share your course catalog with external parties and all those things. But let me know if that answered your question, John, or if you have any follow-ups. Otherwise, I can connect you with someone from the Learner team.
Question about Docker DevStack. So if you haven't heard, there is an effort in place to get a DevStack working that is based on Docker rather than Vagrant. And that is still, I would say, in sort of the experimental phase. The monster has taken its first few steps, but isn't ready to leave the lab quite yet. How to enable a theme on there? I don't know the answer to that question.
So, I mean, it should be the same way as enabling a theme in a regular DevStack. So that nothing fundamental about the structure of the project has changed.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine there's a difference there.
In the current Docker DevStack, you have to take a couple extra steps. You just have to follow the instructions for mounting a local edX platform working copy, because it comes with a version, embedded in the Docker image, and then you have to mount the volume to get that. But I would imagine that otherwise, it should be the same steps.
There was some typing that stopped.
It's funny on the YouTube chat. We can all type as open notes. Okay. Yeah. So Aziz, I think the best thing to do will definitely be to connect with someone in the theming room to help work through. I am not enough of an expert on the theming to be able to answer specific questions about that.
And Blake has put a link to his site, noticeability.org, which is cool. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, that's great. And then just following up, John, how will the catalog service impact the LMS find courses interface post FICUS? So I believe that it will not. So the find courses interface will still exist, and that it will not use the course discovery service, I believe.
Not sure.
Not sure. Yeah, so that's something that we'll keep an eye on, John, for you, and you will definitely keep people posted as there'll be a change in that functionality. So Peter asked if there is a wiki or similar in advance of the project day, and there is. So I will go grab that link. There's a whole section on the wiki devoted to the conference. Jill from OpenCraft posted a Birds of a Feather. So I'll also post a link to the Birds of a Feather page as well.
And also, while we're on the topic of theming, I'll just talk a little bit. The direction that we're headed. There's a couple things of note. One is we'll be adopting most likely Bootstrap 4 as kind of the base for our theme. I mean, it's going to take a while to convert all of our projects, especially LMS and CMS, to have that as a base. But we're hoping that would allow a lot more clear direction for the community as far as how to put your own theme on top, because it should just, it should just follow kind of Bootstrap's convention. And the other thing is we're actively looking at using Webpack to do the asset pipeline build, both for styles and for JavaScript, and that should hopefully at some point make things a lot more clear as far as how you affect changes both in look and potentially adding your own custom JavaScript. So those are efforts underway, but they're all pretty major efforts. So it's going to take a while before you sort of see the fruits of that.
Yeah. So as George said, that's a very forward-looking effort that will it'll be very iterative in terms of the impact that it has. We're still in the very early stages of figuring out how we're going to implement that and roll that out. But there is a talk at the conference that I linked in the chat that will give an update sort of on where we are, at least as of the end of May, on that topic. We should have some fun music or something to play.
Bring in your banjo next time.
Okay. It's a witty banjo or witty banjo? Like a slack pole?
We definitely need to learn from like the morning drive radio disc.
Just have a bunch of just a soundboard and drops. Yeah. Will OpenEdX ever be made to run on CentOS? So what I would say about that, Azure is, I believe people have made efforts to do that. I don't believe that it will ever, in the foreseeable future, I don't believe it will be supported by edX. I think there's an opportunity if someone wanted to say, I'm going to maintain a version of the configuration repo that gets the platform running on CentOS. I think that would be a great thing that we would love to enable the community to do, but it's not something that edX itself is going to take on.
Yeah, I will say probably your best bet. I think a lot of the effort we're focusing on right now is containerizing the individual services, as well as and Joel could talk a little bit more about breaking up edX platform into much more discrete pieces, so they can in turn be containerized. The idea is that with individual containers, you can run those containers on any platform underlying base host OS of your choosing. So you're not beholden to running the stuff on Ubuntu only. You can run it on anything that can run Docker. Basically, is the idea.
Right. Yeah. And for now, the base OS of the Docker image will continue to be Ubuntu, although, yeah, I'm not sure if that would ever change or when that would change. But so Zach had a question about Ficus.2 about insights.
Yep. So those I don't believe any of the Insight repos have changed between Ficus 1 and Ficus 2. There really were very few changes for 0.2. We put it out not because there was so much that had changed, but because there was one particular problem that was causing people a lot of headaches. And so we figured if we're going to fix that, we might as well put out whatever else there is, but it's just a few things. So yes, the tags are in the Insight repos, but you'll see that Ficus.2 and Ficus.1 are tagging the same commit.
We should do is we should have like pre-selected questions we just ask each other during the intervening time.
Yeah, just to keep the channel live. No dead air, right? That's
No
a bad
dead air.
thing.
It's a bad thing. All right, that's okay.
Bad air is bad. Dead air is bad. All right. Zach's happy.
Azizur asked about opening up Terraform templates for the public. That is, yes, I would say yes, that is still something that we are interested in. That's definitely the direction that we're interested in moving and separating the provisioning aspect of our infrastructure from the sort of configuration aspect. So having a clean separation between Ansible and Terraform is sort of a near to medium term thing that we're interested in. I think long term, I think that Docker is still something that we're very interested in from a deployment perspective, although I guess Terraform would still have a significant role in that universe.
For those listening who aren't familiar with Terraform and think that Ansible and the configuration repo are geeky things they don't understand, Terraform is even geekier and even less important to understand. It's a tool for setting up a number of machines that you can then run Ansible on to get software onto it. Nate A. Hey, Nate.
Hi, Nate. No, awesome.
Someday I'll have to understand. Oh, there it is. Dockerization.
So, all right. So, Nate, I can give you a update sort of on our current thinking. So, right now, our focus has been a sort of 3-step process focused purely on DevStack. So the first step in that process is replicating Vagrant and potentially extending it to include the catalog service, which is sort of a one of the main reasons to embark on this is just because the catalog service does not currently exist in the Vagrant DevStack environment, and figuring out how to make it work in that environment is a significant task, and we would prefer to sort of just move on to Docker in order to do that. We see that effort as the first step in a sort of longer running project around fully externalizing configuration of the platform, such that we can build a single Docker image and use it across dev, test, and production. That you can sort of imagine that that's a large task, but we think that that's the direction that we're headed in. We saw the attacking the DevStack piece of it as a low risk approach to sort of getting more experience and starting that process. So I would say a production-ready deployment of OpenEdX using Docker Compose is pretty far down time-wise. It's definitely something it's definitely in our vision of where we're headed.
Yeah, but that said, I think some of the IDAs, the smaller components, there's likelihood that they might lead edX platform itself, because there's multiple things going on with edX platform. So you may have opportunities to experiment with the smaller IDAs in terms of actually deploying those using Docker containers.
I did.
Yeah, so definitely we'll try and keep the community in the loop, Nate, and let you know. I think we're still in the early sort of discovery phases. like I said, like this is like we see sort of externalizing config as the big project that needs to happen here, and so we're still figuring out, you know, with all of the complexities of our own deployment, white label and theming, how does that impact config? Like what are all the different factors that we need to do to get to sort of a clean image that can move across environments and have, you know, plug into the configuration of each of those environments. So Ranji asked about SCORM. So SCORM is a thing that we've heard a lot about. I actually think Nate might be the person with the most information about SCORM in the OpenEdX community at this point. I think from edX's perspective, we've looked at it, and it's not something that's on our roadmap at the moment. We have we're a bit more interested in or a bit more focused on sort of other ways of sharing data with trusted partners who need it. Because a lot of the interest in SCORM, from our perspective, is around enterprise customers interested in the essentially getting data from their learners who are interacting with the platform. So we've taken sort of a different approach to solving that particular problem that isn't related to SCORM. And Nate hopefully posted a link in the remote meetup. So if you're watching this later, you can find the link in chat to a blog post that AppSembler did around SCORM. And if you're watching this later and hanging on this long, kudos to you. Right. So Nate noted that the most common use case is wanting to get their SCORM legacy content into their OpenEdX courses, and that's definitely a use case for the community, but it's less of one for edX.org. So Aaron asked, how could we, the community, go about building a community portion of the configuration repo? I think that's a great question. I think there's, we know that we recognize that there's a few specific areas that, the community is most interested in sort of contributing to and extending, and particularly in ways that edX, the organization, wants to enable but can't fully own, because, for instance, if you want to deploy on OpenStack, we're not going to be able to own the validation and testing of the OpenStack support. This is something that we've definitely talked about, and we're definitely open to ideas. I think finding a way to bring those community and the edX versions of some of these areas and having them work together, but having the ownership be clear and separate is useful. So if you have ideas on that, it's an area that we're really interested in exploring.
And the DevOps group here has always been very forward-thinking about community and communicating with the community and supporting them. They have, in fact, their own separate DevOps hangout that they've been doing for longer than we have been doing this remote meetup. So definitely we should be able to get a conversation going about how best to have a shared configuration repo in whatever ways that makes sense. Right, so Nate, so something like a play specifically for SCORM seems simple enough that it could live in the configuration repo. Something like supporting CentOS would be a much larger change which is harder for me to picture how it would coexist with the Ubuntu plays. But those are the kinds of things that we should be discussing with DevOps, because they've got much more experience and skills about and opinions about how they'd want to organize the configuration repo. Oh, and Nate has linked to their SCORM playbook.
Yeah, so this is an area where my ignorance of Ansible will sort of hamper my ability to give a good answer, but I'm speaking merely conceptually that creating a way to expose community-owned plays and configurations like CentOS. We have merged OpenStack support, but that's the sort of thing that I think ideally would be managed separately by the community that owns that support, since we don't really have a great way of validating it on an ongoing basis. The first step from my perspective is creating spaces to just share those things, and that's the sort of thing that we've been doing just on the Confluence wiki with like the XBlock directory and the quote unquote other tools directory, things like that. I think there's probably opportunities to make the OpenEdX portal a place to highlight and share like quote unquote community supported things like that. From a technical perspective, I have sort of less specifics on the best way to do that.
Yeah, just based on my experience, most likely the roles are going to be what are most reusable, especially if we minimize kind of dependent roles. Playbooks are going to be fairly site specific as far as your own implementation and how you want to deploy stuff. So I think it's something we should keep bouncing ideas off of each other and figure out what's the best way of like collecting those roles and how you can enable those roles into your own playbooks. I've definitely experimented with running Ansible inside Docker container, which makes it very nice. In that container, you can just check out roles from different repos, whether it's from edX or edX plus community roles, and then you sprinkle your own playbooks on top by composing using those roles.
Thanks, George. Going back, so Zach asked about navigation rules between sections or subsections. So we do have a feature that is in Ficus. It might even be in Eucalyptus. I forget. I also forget what the name of art is for it, because it went through a couple of permutations. But essentially, subsection gating was a feature that was added sometime in the late summer or early fall. I can link to the docs around that. Actually, someone replied here. Oh yeah.
Subsection prerequisites.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's in Eucalyptus, so thank you, Juan. My Slack is really
Slacky.
Yeah, so the upstream contribution, I mean, Nate, I think things on that level, the SSL support and things like that, I think those should be pretty straightforward for us to take upstream. I think larger sections of things like CentOS support are the sorts of things that we want. Like, I think it would be great if there were a community group that said that they were committed to maintaining that support, and we would be happy to facilitate that and find the right tools and support that we could provide to both make that group function and sort of promote the things that are being done by those groups. All right, it looks like we're winding down here in terms of questions. So I want to thank everyone again for joining this meetup, and we really appreciate all the great questions, and we'll follow up on some of the good points here, and let us know again how we can continue to improve both what we're doing on the OpenEdX team and this meetup specifically, and we hope to see as many of you as possible in Madrid.
Woohoo!
Thanks, man.
Yay, Madrid.
Yay, Madrid.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.